All right, welcome to Halitics. So glad to talk to you this Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. And we've got Arlen with us. It's always a treat. Arlen, I'm going to ask you the question that you don't see it on your screen, but I can see it on mine. It's the actual title of this live stream. Did Joe Biden revive his campaign and rise like Lazarus from the dead? Arlen, tell us the answer.
Well, he certainly started to, and I hope he continues to do the same. There's definitely some sign of life in Joe Biden, and he seems to have woken up out of a coma almost, and now he's looking stronger and ready to fight, and that's what we've been needing, because the alternative is pretty dreadful.
Well, Arlen, I didn't watch the State of the Union. I always view them as just infotainment. There's nothing there really for me to worry about. I care almost 100% about policy. In fact, all the chatter about whether Biden's too old or not, I mean, yeah, of course he's too old. But in the end, I don't even care, because what I care about is what are the policies that the president promotes. I read a good commentary about that, where the writer said, hey, yeah, I'm a little bit bothered by Biden's age, but frankly, if I liked his policies better, then I'd be less bothered about his age. And that's where I am. Did you hear anything about policy? And we're going to get into the details. There's your column, by the way, in Daily Kos. And you didn't, as I saw it, maybe I missed it, and we've got quotes from it. We're going to play some clips. But was there anything policy-oriented off the bat that struck you in a particular way, good, bad, and different?
I was more interested in how he came across, because the general picture that Fox News and all those other sites are trying to put out is that he's an old, doddering man and he can't do the job. But I think he showed that he is, fully capable, that he's strong, and he's, here to do the hard work that needs to be done. And I think that is very important, and I'm sorry you did not see that, because I think it's significant. But as far as his policies, I think he's been pretty consistent about what he wants. The only thing that disappointed me was his thoughts on Israel and Gaza, and I think he should have done more, and I think he's going to disappoint progressives unless he does a lot more.
All right, Arlen, well, I can't disagree. We're going to talk a little bit later on about his allusions to, and he did mention the climate catastrophe. I call it the climate holocaust. We'll get to that. There was some discussion about it, not a lot. I want to get your thoughts on that particular aspect. But before we go there, we do have, let me see. Oh, there's my heads. Looks a little bit big. We're just playing around here. Got a little bit of a late start, folks. Sorry about that. It's not still the weekend, but I kind of kept. Also, we got that spring forward thing going, right, Arlen? The what do you call it? The daylight savings time kind of messes everything up too.
Well, it's nice. I'm glad to have the daylight a little bit longer in the day, and it's a good sign that we're heading toward summer and nicer weather.
It's true, although we lose an hour in the spring as the clocks go forward. So, Arlen, let's see if we get. So you wanted me to, well, here we go. Let's go right to the State of the Union. Here we go. Let's play a little bit of a clip of this.
All right.
There we go.
All right. Thank you. All right. I just pounded a Celsius. Let's do this. Woo! Woo!
All right. So obviously that's really not Joe Biden. This is the Saturday Night Live clip, and I'm going to play a little more of it, Arlen, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knew, no, this is not really State of the Union. You liked it, though. You found this, amusing? What was it about this clip you particularly, enjoyed?
Well, it's typical Saturday Night Live. They like to spoof things that are happening in the news, and this had just happened, and I thought they did a pretty clever job of doing it. So I hope your sound, though, is a little better.
Could you not hear it? Well, I think people could hear it. Maybe on your end it was a little soft, but we'll play a little more in a sec. But I just want to say I'm such a curmudgeon. For me, Saturday Night Live hasn't been any good since Chevy Chase left in 1977. Actually, that's not true. He was replaced by Dan Aykroyd. For me, Saturday Night Live hasn't been any good since John Belushi actually died. So the Chevy Chase year was a good one, but the years following were good too. Here is more. Let's see. I hope you can hear this, Arlen, but we're going to play a little more of it.
All right, okay. Mr. Speaker, too slow. Let's go.
All right. Can you hear that, Arlen, by the way?
Yeah, I can.
All right, good.
Oh. All right, everybody. Folks, tonight I'm going to cover a lot. There's going to be a lot of applause. So, Kamala, I hope you didn't skip leg day, girl. You're going to be up and down all night. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I'll stop it right there, Arlen, because that was the section I really wanted to play, because that was the one thing I noticed. I didn't watch it live, of course. I will not watch these live. My life is I have too many important things to do, trimming my nails right there at the top of the list.
I know you wash your car every once in a while.
Defragging my hard drive. I mean, I put a lot of important, day-to-day tasks ahead of watching the State of the Union.
I understand.
You get that. But the funny thing about that is I noted on Friday, I believe, how Kamala was jumping up and down like a jumping jack. So I thought that was very amusing. Let's go to the actual. This is the live stream. You can see there she is over Biden's left shoulder. And by the way, thank you, Fox News. I want to just say I use the Fox News because I know you're particularly an opponent of Fox. Arlen, it was not an editorial choice, but I went through the YouTube videos and theirs was the easiest for me to find different sections of the stream. So here we go. And we're with the thought leader, by the way, Arlen Grossman. Don't forget, click subscribe. You've got to click subscribe. I'm going to actually play that right now. You got to click. Well, you don't see you'll see it. So you got to click subscribe right now because I'm close to 200. Sort of excited. Got a couple more over the weekend. It's been a trickle, if barely a drip, drop, drip of new subscribers. But if I get to 200, that'll put a little bit of air in my sails. Here we go. Joe Biden, Kamala on his right shoulder.
And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time.
All right. Well, that's not where she jumps up, but I want to just comment on that section. We'll get to where she jumps up a lot, Arlen. He kind of stumbled there. He kind of did. First, he said, this is unique because we're under attack at home. And then he says, what makes it unique is we're under attack also abroad. I get what he was trying to go. I don't think there was a major gaffe, but I did think that was interesting that he kind of tried to juxtapose that. It seems like his two big issues, right, are they foreign policy and the threat that Trump poses. That seems to be where he was going with that.
Let me say something about that. I think it's more important than anything else is how he comes across. And he came across very forcefully, very alive. He didn't look like an 81-year-old doddering man. And I think that was really important for people to see because the commentary on other stations.
Putin of Russia is on the march.
Why am I hearing that? That's annoying. So you were saying, no, Arlen, go ahead. We'll get back and play that in a moment. But you felt that just the importance was that he go up there and look presidential. Oh, and we do have, well, look at all these little issues we've got here. Go ahead. The important part, and you feel he definitely did that. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that.
There was a lot of time that the Democrats and Kamala were jumping up and down because he had some great applause lines. And it was very interesting to see how the Republicans just sat there so quietly, not moving, which is very typical of these in the unit addresses. But, because he said a lot of good lines and the Democrats obviously liked them a lot. And as far as Fox goes, just for the heck of it, I tuned into Fox right after his speech was over just to see what they have to say. And they had their political expert there, Brett Hume, saying, oh, he looked senile. He looked terrible. It's just totally different than what I had seen. So, but that's
funny because Hume himself looks kind of like the crypt keeper. He's more and more the deputy dog with the droops and everything. And he's quite ancient, I believe, at this point. So that's a kettle calling the pot black or something of that nature. It's kind of odd that he would be making that point. And also, I agree with you. Look, again, I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I'm not voting for Joe Biden. Certainly not voting for Trump either. But yes, I think he made a strong case for the American people. Didn't mean anything to me because I just care about policy. But clearly, and I didn't hear anything about policy that mattered to me. But yeah, he did a good job. I mean, why do you think that is? I mean, was he hopped up on something, or is it just that he's been playing possum and everyone thinks? The whole idea is you lower expectations and lower expectations. You put out that he couldn't do the interview at the Super Bowl because he was afraid he might get blindsided. And that was all designed to have people think that he's just completely incapable of putting together a sentence. And then obviously that's not the case.
Well, the way I look at it is I think that he and his team looked at the polls. He's consistently been under Trump and not doing very well. And, I think they realize that, they're not getting anywhere and they have to do something different. They have to be stronger and they have to confront Trump. And this was a great opportunity. The whole country is watching and it's a good time to start. And I think, Biden got something inside him that, made him look stronger and feel stronger. And I think it came across. I sure hope it did.
Well, again, I just want to get back to where I saw in that last clip where I don't think it was a major problem. I mean, he just said he said the unique thing is that, we're under threat at home, but then he said, and also abroad. And the reason I raise that is, do you see that as where Biden is going to be making the strength, his campaign is going to be centered on two things: the threat that Donald Trump poses to our freedoms and our democracy, and foreign, I guess Ukraine, right? I mean, is that the two biggest issues for Joe Biden at this point, do you believe?
Well, he covered a lot of things in that speech. He went over the economy and the accomplishments that they've made as far as getting drug prices lower and jobs, jobs and all that good stuff that he's done, and the bills that he's passed that, made a difference in the economy and a lot of things. So he really covered pretty much everything: foreign policy, domestic, because, this was a State of the Union and he needs to get into all those things. And I think, those issues are looking a lot better now. Certainly, and he needs to let the American people know about them, because otherwise they're going to get the wrong point of view if they listen to all these and watch all these right-wing TV stations and radio programs.
If they're not reading the New York Times and the Washington Post and Daily Kos with Arlen, they're getting the wrong opinion. I guess that's your view, Arlen. So,
yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
All right, now I want to play this because this is here. We'll see Kamala jumping up and down like she's got ants in her trousers, but also, Arlen, again, the focus on Ukraine. And he talks about a lot of issues, right? It's an hour speech, so maybe it's unfair. But this is the beginning. This is right at the very start of his speech. So this is clearly what he thought was most important to lead with. Oh, let's get that video.
March, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not.
That was a great line right there. Great line.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's ridiculous, but okay.
Ukraine.
Well, I know you have a different point of view about Ukraine.
Ukraine can stop Putin.
But look how
there she is, just applauding.
Well, look how uncomfortable the Speaker of the House.
Well, I mean, look, the Republicans have always been pro-war. I shouldn't say that. There was a strong anti-interventionist stance in World War II, which was very wrong-headed, very misguided. But, since the Cold War started, because communism really posed a threat to, and it was perceived as posing a threat to the profits of the U.S. Corporations. The Republicans and Richard Nixon and always often tried to outdo the Democrats as commie haters. Sure. But Trump's really reversed that, and obviously people like Mike Johnson, raised in a very in the Republican Party of Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, are a little bit uncomfortable with a less aggressive Republican in the White House, obviously, especially when it comes to Russia.
Yeah, but Trump has definitely changed things a lot in that party policy wise, and everybody on that party seems to have just joined up with him and pretty much acceded to whatever he wants and whatever.
Why
he
do you think the Republican base has? And this is something I was so disappointed in the New York Times editorial, not op-ed, editorial. We'll get to that in a bit, but I just want your thoughts. Why do you think? What is it? Why do you, I find it so frustrating that the only explanations ever given by the elites who support Biden for the very staunch support Trump has from the working class in America, the only explanations is that the working class is bigoted, they're ignorant, they're uneducated. There's never even an effort to try to understand what Trump might be providing that neither the Democratic Party nor Republican elites, McConnell, Rubio, Cruz, Nikki Haley, are providing. And so I'm going to ask you, does that occur to you? Do you ever say, gee, maybe there's something there? As bad as Trump is, no argument, he's bad. But maybe, just maybe, some of his policies, some of his rhetoric is actually relevant to this, the precarious economic position of so many Americans.
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans identify with Trump, thinking that he's on their side and he's going to be helping them.
Why? What is it that he says? What has he said, or perhaps even done, that would cause them to think he might be on their side?
Well, he comes across as anti-elite. He's against Hollywood and all these new things that are going on. And you have a conservative base in the Republican Party that is uncomfortable with a lot of these new things, gender roles and all.
So it's not policy. So there's nothing about, say, economic policy. There's nothing about military adventurism overseas, where Trump has been in the past against that. You don't see there's any so you're basically agreeing it's the ignorance of the base, right? They don't like new gender roles. They don't like Hollywood. They're not well educated, so they don't really understand how globalism helps them. Is that it? I mean, because to me, it's what I want is for us to try to build a coalition that's against both Trump and Biden. And I don't think we can do that if all we do is condemn Trump supporters for being ignoramuses.
I don't think it's that, Hal. I think it's more a matter of style. I mean, I don't think Republican pro-Trump people are thinking about the policy issues so much as they are about, hey, this guy is confident, he's strong, he's going to change things, make everything better. I don't think they really think a lot about any policies that he has. And frankly, I don't know what policies he has that would be that helpful to that certainly that his base is aware of.
Well, I mean, he talked an awful lot about trade, and he won the states in 2016. He was always talking about trade. In fact, reports of his speeches in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania were always focused on how he would discuss trade and how trade had hurt the factory workers in those states. Well, Hillary Clinton barely did discuss those issues.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he doesn't have issues. I'm just saying that basically, mostly what he's about is his confidence, his charisma, his, the feeling that he's going to take over and be the dictator that's going to change our country. And, That's the part that scares me, because everybody, the Republican Party.
I think he's scary. I don't disagree. I'm just saying I think it's important that we recognize that there's something lacking in the lives of so many of our fellow Americans, and they're looking for it. And the only person they think, and I agree, they're pretty much wrong about it, but I understand why they're so disenchanted with every other option as well.
Yeah, I can understand that too. And we often agree how that the Democratic Party has moved away from their strong stance for the working people. Now Biden is starting to make that a little bit better. He's becoming more pro-union and more pro-worker. And I'm hoping the rest of the party will, start working on that after the election is over, and maybe change the Democratic Party into a party that's more like it used to be, which was a pro.
I wonder if it's just too late at this point. I just really do. I think there's so much bad feelings. There's so much skepticism, cynicism. There's such a feeling of having been sold a bill of goods by politicians in both parties that I don't know if we can resuscitate democracy. And I would feel differently if I felt that Joe Biden was really committed, as I had hoped Barack Obama was, truly committed to wresting power and influence and money from the billionaire class. But I don't think he is. Or if he were, I don't think they would support him. And then I don't think he could win anyway. So I don't really see much hope, any reason for hope.
Well, things may not happen the way we would like them until the election is over. And then I think it's up to younger people in the Democratic Party to start looking at those kind of things. And don't forget, in his speech, Biden did make a point of calling out the super rich and that they're not paying their taxes. And, those are things that I think
he did do that. He did do that.
Yeah.
I'll give him credit for that. I know he did. This is your opening lines in the Daily Kos. By the way, people should go to dailykos.com and read Arlen. Obviously, we have disparate views sometimes, but he did a great job. This is really well written, extremely well written. And you can see from all the comments that you touched a nerve. I was surprised. I would have thought this was meat for the Daily Kos crowd, and certainly they responded to you, but there was negative response too. And I'm kind of getting the feeling they just didn't read. They were just looking for people just comment without really thinking sometimes.
They often do. By the way, besides the Daily Kos, they could go right to my blog, thebigpicturereport.com, and it's there too. So,
right. And in fact, viewers can see the link right under your name, under your face.
/thought leader. Right.
Yes. The thought leader is Arlen Grossman. So I used to have the thought wrestler on, Danny Cardwell. So you are now the thought leader. Yeah. To me, this was a perfectly fair comment. I feel like Joe Biden has to. People said, don't call it, use a virtual comma. You're insulting him. No, he has been somewhat under the radar. He hasn't been out front and center. I heard he gave fewer interviews than any president before him, or at least in recent times. So that's maybe a little bit of poetic license to say a virtual coma, but it's not like, crazy unreasonable, but some folks, I guess, didn't like that expression, Arlen.
Well, yeah, but the good thing is that right after the speech, in the last few days, he's been going to a lot of different places. He's been getting out there and speaking. And I think, before he was holding back, and I think they've realized that this hasn't done him any good. His poll numbers have been down. And I think if he gets out there and shows what he did at the State of the Union address, that could make a difference. And also another thing that's interesting, the Democrats raised like $10 million right after his speech, which was, I understand, a record. And the Democratic Party has lots of money, and the Republican Party has little, and they're still having to pay off Trump's legal bills. So I think there are some advantages.
I think right now, if I was going to bet on the election, I would, and I've been saying this for a while. And you've been saying it more than I have, and more vociferously. I do think Biden is in better shape. I would rather be in his shoes right now than I would want to be in Trump's in terms of winning that election. And the latest Emerson poll, I talked about this Friday, Arlen, there hasn't been one. I was hoping there'd be some polling out this morning or this afternoon so I could go to it that was post so too, but there wasn't any. So all I can do is go with the Emerson poll that came out Friday, which was Thursday SOTU, which does have Biden up by 2 points. Now, of course, that's nationally, and you have to look at the states, and he's still behind a lot of the battleground states. Arlen, I don't think Trump's going to win this thing. I mean, you've been saying that from the beginning. Where I think you got a little bit wrong is you got a little ahead of your skis where you said he wasn't going to be the Republican nominee.
Yeah, it looks like, everybody else is cleared out, so he'll probably be the nominee. But, I'm not saying 100% he will be, because I think he's self-destructing. I think he's showing signs of the pressure. He's stumbling more with his speeches, getting more extreme. And I think, that's going to, the Republicans maybe at some point will say, hey, the way he's going now, we're going to get creamed in November unless we make a change. But
I don't know how they can. I don't see that happening. But maybe it's possible for sure. So again, here's something from your piece at COAS and BigPictureReport.com. What we were talking about before, and what I talked about was the beginning was going right at Trump about Russia. I don't know. I don't know if that was his best issue, because a lot of Americans, I showed you a poll from over the summer where Americans said we shouldn't be spending so much of our money on Ukraine. But certainly the prevailing sentiment in Washington, where military contractors and weapons manufacturers have great influence and sway, certainly the prevailing sentiment there is pro-war. So I would assume at least he was thinking about that. I don't know policy-wise if this will resonate with the base or with – it probably will resonate with the Democratic base. I'm sure they poll tested everything, the theory being, hey, Democrats support this war. They're going to be in favor of more money going to Ukraine, even if it hasn't worked so far, hasn't worked out well so far.
Well, Hal, I think the main thing is that Biden was able to make a strong case for going into Ukraine by pointing out his, history, and how in World War II, we let Hitler, get off the hook and go and start taking over countries, and we've allowed, Russia. He mentioned Russia's not going to stop at Ukraine; they're going to keep on going. So I think he made a strong historical case.
Where's the evidence for that? What? I mean, that just is purely the rank speculation. As a matter of fact, Putin himself has said he doesn't want to keep going. He's not even going to be able to occupy Ukraine. And there was a really good piece, which I commend to your attention. I'll play it maybe tomorrow on Halitics, so you should be watching that on. I know you tune in religiously, where the guy made the point, and I've made this point too from other experts, the Ukraine war has actually empowered Putin. It's made him stronger. If we had negotiated from the beginning, tried to, come up with some sort of reasonable solution, there'd be 50, 75, 100,000 more Ukrainians still alive. The country is being hollowed out. The population is being decimated. The land is being laid waste. And Putin's army now is battle tested. I mean, if they really want to keep going after they take Ukraine, maybe they would be able to. I don't think they will. I don't see any way. They're not standing up to the Germans and the French. That's not going to happen. But if it were, if Putin was going to delude himself and to think he could do it, maybe he would say, hey, my army's really tough now. We're really tested. We were able to stand up to all the combined forces of the West. And now we've got. So it seems to me this entire war, misguided, has actually led just to the opposite of what was hoped for.
Well, I think you're overlooking a few things, Hal. Number one, you got to look at Putin's been a dictator, a ruthless dictator for years. His word can not really be believed. I'm surprised that you are listening to what he has to say, because I think he's a chronic liar and like I say,
all politicians lie, Arlen. That's nothing new. They all say whatever they think you want to hear.
Yeah, but Biden made a good case. I mean, Russia and Putin probably won't stop if they feel they can keep on going and get more territory and more power. So I think that's something for Americans and the rest
I think
of
that's
the
just,
world.
again, pure speculation, Arlen. There's no reason to believe that. And
Well,
I don't believe that.
why do you suppose every country in Western Europe and NATO are, giving all their, as much as they can to Ukraine and are on the side of, Ukraine?
Tremendous amount of pressure from the United States is one reason. So I think that's the biggest. And I frankly, the leadership there in Western Europe is pretty much neoliberal, neocon. I mean, Europe isn't as bad as we are, and they have a much tighter safety net. But the leaders have been, they're not much different. They're not pro peace. They're not pro worker. They're pro corporation. And this is a war that's enriching their corporations. It's that simple.
Besides all that, Hal, the important thing, I think the thing to note is that it's in their self-interest. They see it in their self-interest to stop Putin because they know that, he could come after them and he could, make a lot more trouble.
I don't even know if Russia has a bigger population now than Germany. Germany may be the largest country. Well, in terms of the European population, Germany might have more people. The Western armies are much more advanced. They're more powerful. Russia has a solid army. There's no way this is not the Red Army of 1945. This is a country that's lost significant population. It's lost a lot of territory. And there is a combined Europe that will easily that Russia has no chance to defeat. And a Europe that has nuclear weapons, just like Putin has.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think who knows what Putin's going to do? I don't trust him. I think he's just as crazy as Trump sometimes. So, he just kills all his opponents and, does, the worst kind of things and expects to get away with it. And he does because he's in total control of his country.
Well, I would argue that the policy we've pursued and which Joe Biden has promoted very, very aggressively has been, from my perspective, I think, and from many others, a failure. It has actually empowered Putin. It has actually solidified his grip in Russia. The Russian economy is doing well right now, in part because of all the military spending, and they are advancing slowly, but advancing in Ukraine. And even if we kept giving more money, the argument is, well, the Ukraine is struggling because they're getting less support from us, which may be true. But even when we were giving them full support, their vaunted, the offensive over the summer, it stalled. It didn't go anywhere. And they've lost so many men and their economy is a standstill. It just isn't. It's not working for them. This is not a solution. This is it's only going to get worse unless we figure out a way to stop the killing. And that means going to Putin and having a conversation with him. I cannot understand why this is not the primary, what we should be doing. It's what Trump says he'd do. And it seems to me that's the right thing to do. Let's sit down and talk with this guy.
I have no problem with that, Hal. I just don't trust Putin. I don't think he would give me ground at all. He wouldn't want to get back any.
But we haven't had the conversations. Blinken's even said, he told Finland, he said, hey, we're not going to talk to them until they withdraw. Well, they're never going to withdraw. Why would they? They withdraw, they lose all their leverage. I mean, that's crazy talk. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. If you want a final word, though, go ahead, because I don't want to talk over you. If you have a final thought.
I'm just saying, my main point is it is absolutely necessary for us to get on the side of Ukraine and stop Russia, because they're the ones who invaded Ukraine. Ukraine didn't invade them, and we have to make sure that Putin doesn't get what he wants, so he'll do it again.
All right, so I hear you. I got you. Your criticism here is part of and I think it's fair, is that part of the reason Biden wasn't able to get much done during his first term was that just as the Republican-led Senate, when Obama lost his majority, and even when he needed a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, They were determined, as McConnell said, to make him a one-term president, and they showed the same lack of any kind of assistance to Biden. Is that fair? Is that your point, really? So he shouldn't be judged to the extent that maybe there wasn't as much legislation as some of us on the left wanted. Biden gets a little bit, not a complete pass, and you don't give him a complete pass, but he gets a bit of a pass because Republicans have been so intransigent.
Well, he can't get a whole lot done if the Republicans are going to block him on everything. You know, the border bill was a very good case, and we could see that, you know, Biden was willing to give in to what the Republicans wanted, but Trump said, oh, no, don't vote for that. We want to use this as a campaign issue. And so, you know, he just dismissed the kind of, you know, things that we need to do to get the border intact. So, you know, that was an obvious example, and he pointed it out during his speech.
Do you think, though, that it's fair to point out that this is what parties do? I mean, the Democrats had virtually no appetite whatsoever to work with Trump. And from the day he took office, also, they were going after him. So is it fair to say this is just politics? Well,
obviously it is, but I think it's gotten a little bit more extreme since Trump has pretty much taken control of the Republican Party. And, you know, they're all just simply going to listen to what he says and do what he says. And he seems like a dictator of that party. And
let me just push back on that, though. And I'll make a couple comments. First of all, when George W. Bush was president, there was a lot of bipartisanship, right? Joe Biden was happy to work with George W. Bush to say, grease the skids for the absolutely disastrous war in Iraq is a good example of where the Democrats worked with the Republicans. And I think, and I'm not maybe wrong about this, but certainly Democrats worked with the Republicans and vice versa to pass community destroying trade deals and the like. With regard to, so it wasn't just, but the intransigence that you talk about actually started, and I agree with you, with Obama, but that was pre-Trump, right? So you can't really blame Trump for McConnell saying, I want to make Obama a one-term president. I mean, Trump was just he was doing an apprentice at that point.
Well, you know, he was there, though. You know, Trump's been there, getting his presence known. And then what we have now is that he's taken such total control of that party that there's no way anybody's going to cooperate with the Democrats. I mean, can you name anybody in the Republican Party that's left that is willing to stand up to Trump? Because I don't know of any.
Well, I don't think they were ever willing to work with the Democrats. I mean, as you pointed out, when Obama was president, you know, McConnell, there was not one vote for, you know, any policies. I mean, they wouldn't even work with Obama to gut Social Security. Remember when he wanted to cut Social Security and the Republicans said no? So, you know, I don't know. Maybe we should thank the Republicans, right? We should be glad that the Republicans didn't let Obama cut Social Security. I'm glad that the Republicans aren't letting Biden send more military, so, you know, waste more money and perpetuate more death in Ukraine. And I'm also glad, frankly, that they didn't agree with Biden's border bill, because Biden's border bill was really bad. Biden's border bill made it really hard for people. It wasn't a humanitarian bill in any way.
Yeah, but I think what was proposed and what he was willing to go for was going to make a difference. It would help the situation, and the Republicans just swept it aside just because of what Trump said. And I think there's every indication that the Democrats are willing to work with the Republicans. They've shown, you know, that they're willing to meet them halfway, but Republicans are just showing that they won't.
I think that's true. A lot of times there are Republican policies that the Democrats tend to prefer. Many of them, at least the Joe Manchins, the Sinemas, the Gottheimers, do like a lot of Republican policy. So I think that's fair. But I think it's also fair to point out that from the day Trump took office, the narrative was going to be and was that he's illegitimate. He doesn't belong. He won by stealing it. He won by colluding with and conspiring with Putin. And there were some areas, frankly, Arlen, where I think the Democrats should have been willing to reach out to Trump. They should have said, hey, the trade deals that you oppose, the TPP, bad idea. You're against it. We're now against it. Let's talk about ways to, rebuild our communities. I think there were things that could have been done. They could have said, hey, let's figure out ways to cut back on all this military spending. And they didn't do that. So I think, there were things the Democrats could have tried to do. I'm not saying they would have worked, and Trump certainly is a strange, person. I don't know what the right word is. I mean, but they didn't even make an effort with him either.
Well, yeah, but Trump was not going to go along with anything that the Democrats wanted. He wanted total control. He wants to be a dictator, so he's not going to work with the Democrats. And there never was a chance for the Democrats to work with him.
I just don't know if I'm, again, you got to try. You can't just ascribe to people the worst possible motives and the worst possible personalities and then just assume, and then just that gives you a pass to not do anything. I don't buy that.
He did do something. He was willing to work with the Republicans. He gave them bills for the infrastructure and, all those.
You're talking about Biden? No, but I'm saying when Trump was president. I'm saying when Trump was president, the out is, Trump was so awful that, he's a horrible dictator. So we could never work with him. But you got to try. I mean, that's, then make the case. Say, hey, we saw some areas where there was possibility to work with Trump, job creation, for example, and he didn't want to work with us. But at least try.
Well, what's the point of trying when you're not going to get anywhere?
Well, because you don't know until you try whether you're going to get somewhere. And because if you do try, then you have a much better argument that you tried, and it was the other person who held you back, who's holding us back.
I'm pretty sure the Democrats tried, and they just didn't get anywhere. They've always been willing, I think, to work with the other side, but obviously the Republicans are not, especially under Trump, are not willing to do that.
Okay. So you mentioned, and I think this is a good point, Arlen. Again, I'm always finding areas of disagreement, but again, you make a very good point about Roe v. Wade, which others have also said could be decisive. Is that your view?
Well, I think it's already paid off in a lot of ways. All these special elections the last couple of years have gone to the Democrats, and they've done better than they were expected. And I think a lot of it has to do with, people are afraid he's going to take away their rights, especially women. They're worried about, not having any rights left by the time he's done, especially when you have a Supreme Court that's so out, last century, it's pretty bad.
All right, Arlen, anything else you want to say about Roe? Because I do want to move to an area where he gave less shrift, and that is the environment. But anything else on reproductive rights or maybe social justice issues in general? I didn't really hear him talk, and he doesn't, which I give him credit for, he doesn't do a lot on identity politics. I don't think the reproductive rights is identity politics, by the way. It's just a human right that you get to control your body. You get to decide whether you want to have children or not. You get to decide to whom you make love to, assuming that it's purely consensual and you're adults. So I think these are human rights. This isn't like he's choosing a particular identity group and saying we need to do this for you or that for you. So I'm good with the Roe stuff, except to say I think, again, what I don't like is when the Democrats kind of ignore but that's what all parties do, is elide their own responsibility, their own role in the problems. But this is a winning issue for them. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And it is, I think, women who are most,
concerned, right? Most concerned.
Right. And I think, they're most of the voting population as far as I know. So it makes a difference.
I don't understand that, Arlen. This is what I don't understand. Why would women be more concerned about reproductive rights than men? I mean, like the law is if you have a child as a man, you're responsible for that child until they're an adult. And it should be. I mean, of course it should be. But why would it only, I guess because, and I shouldn't say I guess, obviously the process of getting pregnant and delivering a child falls much heavier, and child rearing also falls much heavier on women than men. I mean, that's biology. But that said, I would think men too would want the freedom to be able to, you can't decide whether your spouse or your partner has an abortion. That's up to the pregnant woman. It should only be the pregnant woman who decides that. I don't think that's even arguable. But still, don't you want to have the ability to, for example, use condom, buy contraceptives, and have a say if your partner does get pregnant? and you decide together that you don't want to bring the child to term for whatever reason, including the fetus is unhealthy. It could be dangerous to your partner. I mean,
Well,
I would think men would feel strongly about having that reproductive right as well.
I think a lot of men do feel that way, but I think it's more so for women because it is their bodies that all these white men are telling them what to do.
Well, it's not just white men. Your favorite, let's not make it just about white men. Your least favorite Supreme Court justice, as far as I can tell, is not white.
Well, I think if you look at the Republican Party during the State of Union address,
but we're talking about the court that made the decision whether to because it wasn't ultimately Trump. I mean, he appointed several of the justices, but it was the Supreme Court that made that decision.
Yeah, and those people are still there, and they're going to continue to be there.
And also, there's a woman on that court who also voted down Roe.
Absolutely, she's.
So I don't know. It's fair to say it's white men. I mean, it's conservatives. It's Republicans.
They're the ones who have the most power, Hal. And it's just every time anywhere you look where there's Republicans, you're going to see mostly white men. Sure, there'll be women and other colors, but, primarily the power is in the hands of white males. They've got the money, they've got the power. So, it's a tough.
Well, that's going to be, I mean, so then is it, I don't know. I just think making that argument, I first of all think it's a little bit disingenuous. Yes, more white men have more power than other groups, but other groups also do have power, and many white men are powerless. So I think we're better. I think those kind of remarks tend to divide the electorate more than unite it. Well, if you want to get white men to say, or at least some white men to say, no, we need to have the choice. We need to have freedom of choice. I think it's better not. I would say I wouldn't ascribe the decision to take away that choice to white men.
Well, of course, it is somewhat of generalization to say that white men are the most conservative right-wing groups, and and there's definitely opinion on every side on those issues. But I think in general, it is the white Christian males that have dominated the government and, continue to do so. And it's up to Biden and Democrats to change that.
Well, okay. I think that's, again, okay. So were you pleased with what Biden said about the climate? I don't have a clip. I couldn't find one, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts were.
Well, he didn't say a lot, but he did point out that the Republicans are not doing anything about it. And at least, he's trying to, and he's got a few things passed. He's got a few things done that'll help the climate, and the Republicans are doing nothing. So I think that's pretty important to point out.
Well, he talked a little bit about, I think, jobs, although not about specifically the Infrastructure Act, which would have been nice to get that passed. But he also made the point, right, that Trump is a denier, right? He doesn't even acknowledge the truth of the climate catastrophe, the human caused. How relevant is it that if you can't admit it's even true? I mean, I criticize Biden because he doesn't deny it, but his policies have generated more greenhouse gases. But is it fair for Biden to say, well, at least I'm living the reality-based world?
Oh, I think it's important. The Republicans are definitely in total denial about this, and certainly young people are aware that their future depends on a world that that's sustainable, and they're not going to get any help at all from the Republicans. So I'm hoping that young people will be voting for Democrats in large numbers.
Well, I think they will, right? I mean, they always do. I don't know why that's going to change. I think many younger people are very upset about the Gaza policy, and maybe some of them won't vote for Biden, but
Yeah, well, sadly, I think there are indications in the polls that young people are not quite as on board with Biden as they were before, as well as Black people and Hispanic people. And these are things that the Democrats are going to have to work much harder on in the next few months to make sure that the Democratic base will be out there and voting in big numbers.
Yeah, what rather than a speech, is there a particular policy announcement that you think Biden could make that would shore up support among younger voters and voters of color? Well,
I'm starting to see a little bit of some signs that he's starting to come around on Gaza and Israel. I think, he might, he's saying the right things now, and he just has to come through with, getting control of the purse strings and putting more pressure on Netanyahu. But that's a big one, I think, the Gaza thing. And he's made a point of saying he's going to draw the line at, what's that place in Gaza, Ramon or whatever, that, that once they go there, then they're going to lose Biden.
Oh, was that Rafah? I may be wrong. Rafah?
Yeah.
So, Arlen, I'm not fully conversant on all that. I know, and I just put up here, this is from the Axios article. I thought they did a real nice job. Very brief, but they kind of laid out where Biden was on climate. But before we get there, or because you mentioned Israel and Gaza, what do you think of this pier idea?
I'm sorry, what's that?
The building a pier.
Oh, yeah. No, that's all great, and that we're putting a lot of humanitarian information. I mean, a lot of humanitarian food and things that will help the civilians. But I think we need to do more than that. We need to, say, hey, Netanyahu, that's enough. We're not going to give you any more money to continue killing all those civilians. So you have to work with us and not be so aggressive and not kill so many innocent civilians.
100%, Arlen. You're watching Halitics with Arlen Grossman, pundit thought leader. We've been discussing his column. And what's the title again, Arlen? Now I forgot it, but it was basically Biden. What was it? Biden hits it out of the park, or grand slam for Biden, or Biden proves he should be president yet again. Something like that.
President Biden woke up.
The night President Biden woke up. It's excellent. It really is. Look, all kidding aside, very well. One thing that Arlen does, even if I don't agree with everything he writes, is he writes well. He writes concisely. He writes nice, short sentences that are easy to understand, and that's all really good. And it's logical. So check it out. TheBigPictureReport.com or Daily Kos, and you can push back against the couple of, there's a lot of positive. I don't want to overstate it. Most of the comments were very favorable. There were a couple there that, and it's fine. Criticism is good, I believe, but when it's fair. So
I'm trying to respond to that.
Push back against the injustice. So this is where I go with this. Biden did not propose new policies on energy and climate or explicitly mention the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, I think we're at a point, Arlen, where the situation is so desperate, like it is in Gaza, where people are now actually starving to death. I mean, children, when people are starving in Gaza, a pier is way too little, way too late, and it kind of ignores. Yeah, I mean, look, people say, well, it'll save lives. It'll save lives. How come you're against saving lives? My answer is no. It will save lives. It's better, I guess, than not doing a pier, but those aren't the only two options. There's other options, which is we stop sending one more shipment to Israel right now. We deploy the U.S. military not just to unload humanitarian aid at a pier. We actually go into Gaza with our tanks and we tell Israel, get the hell out. That's what we should be doing. So I'm not, these like quarter measures aren't enough for me. That's where I am with the environment. That's where I'm with the environment. We have to stop all the emissions, right? As forcibly, as quickly as possible. And here he doesn't propose any new policies on energy and climate. It sounds like you don't think was his strongest area either, though, Arlen.
Well, you know, he could do a lot of things, but he can't do it if the Republicans are still in Congress and stopping everything he does. So, you know, he can only do so much. He's got a lot of resistance against him, and I'm sure he would do more if he could.
Well, he could have, though, declared that there's going to be no more approvals of any drilling in any national parks and any federal areas. He could have said, I'm directing my Justice Department to say no to everything, or whatever group of Bureau of Land Management. I know the Supreme Court would fight back, and I would just say, no, he's the president. Make that a huge issue. He didn't have to approve the Mountain Valley Pipeline. He didn't have to approve. That was not an obligation whatsoever. He didn't need the Republicans to stand with him against that. He could have just said, no, we're not doing the Mountain Valley Pipeline. No, we're not doing that Willow Creek project. He didn't have to approve liquefied natural gas plants on the Gulf Coast. So there were areas where he definitely could have. And why I say it's so crucial is it just keeps getting hotter and hotter. It just 23 was the hottest year ever. And I don't think 24 will be. But look at that. Last month, the hottest ocean temperatures recorded.
Yeah.
We're seeing coral bleaching worse than ever. Antarctica is melting. We don't have time.
Well, yeah, Biden is far from perfect, and he needs to do more. But, the contrast between Biden and the Republican Party is so strong that I think even the little bit that he does is helpful, even if it doesn't, solve the problem. So, he should do more. I agree.
Arlen, let's real quick before we get out of here. We've got a couple more minutes, I guess. Not really, but you recommended this piece, so I at least want to. And I was kind of glad I didn't even see it. I had not seen this in the New York Times. I guess we both subscribe online, or maybe you get the newspaper delivered to your house. I don't get it delivered to mine. I was glad you recommended this because it jibed exactly with a post I put up on social media over the weekend as well. But before we get there, what was it about this article or this by the editorial board? By the way, it's interesting. It's the entire editorial board. This is like the entire newspaper, the paper of record, the Gray Lady, all the news that's fit to print. And they're saying this is something we have to be terrified of. Why did you feel this was worth focusing on for a while?
Well, I think they covered all the important points about Donald Trump and how he's taken over the Republican Party, and they've pretty much acquiesced to everything the Republicans, everything he's done and said, and it's hurtful to the party, it's hurtful to the country, and I think they made a very strong case in pointing that out, and suggesting that we really need to get rid of all these MAGA idiots and get back to the party the way the party used to be. Well,
you mean the party of torture, the party of Chile and Pinochet and Kent State? Is that the party the party of Ronald Reagan slashing taxes on the rich to 28%? Is that the party we need to get back to, Arlen? Is that the great Republican Party of yore?
No, I can't say anything nice about the Republican Party, but they're even worse now than they used to be.
That's the party of Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, they haven't done anything good that I could think of for the last several decades, but
but they're even worse now than when John Yoo was writing memos defending torture. They're worse now. Okay, well maybe I don't know. Then how many 3 million dead in Cambodia from our bombing there when Nixon's secret plan to end the war? 3 million dead. I don't know.
That's been going on for, like I say, for decades. We've been getting into wars that we can't win and don't win, and just killing a lot of people that we don't need to. And it's very tragic and unfortunate. And
well, I mean, that's why to me it's kind of for the New York Times to like wax poetic about the wonders of and I'm exaggerating. They don't do that. They don't say how great the Republicans were in the past, but they do make the same point you just did, that, they used to be a little bit better. And I'm like, really? Where's that? Where's the little bit better? Because I'm curious about that.
Well, there used to be a little bit of bipartisanship, and now there's just none. And I think that's one of the main differences.
All right. And the other issue that I just wanted to raise, what really troubled me about this piece more than anything else, because look, I mean, Trump is it's a cult of personality, right? I mean, it's not about Paul. I think he does talk policy. I think it is important to understand what policies he's promoted in the past that have resonated with his base. But, in the end, he's not about democratic norms. He did promote Jan 6, which was whatever you want to call it an insurrection, whatever. It was clearly an undemocratic attempt to take control of government, to seize power. And he in my view, almost more blatantly when he was calling the Georgia Secretary of State and other efforts, find me some votes. It's very, very scary. This is something I think is good, right? This is better where we disagree. But so I think the Times, and they even acknowledge that there are Republicans who don't like, that this isn't necessarily a totally unpopular policy to be against the war in Ukraine. But what bothers me about this article, what I post on social media, is this is a man who has the support of over 40% of the American voters. Now, I don't think he's going to win. We've talked about this before. I think he will lose. But he is a very, popular politician who was elected president, and the Times can't even be bothered to try to look. There's not one op-ed writer who supports Trump. Not one. The Republicans, the Bret Stephens and the do-thats, they don't like Trump. They're against Trump. David Brooks is like, you got to vote. They're all like, vote for Nikki Haley, vote for Biden. They're comfortable with Biden. The Republicans on the New York staff, the Republican Party, as bad as it's been, their Republicans are comfortable with Biden, which to me tells you more about Biden than it does about anything else. All that said, no, I don't support Trump. I don't think we should be writing out op-eds in support of Trump. What I'm saying is, shouldn't the paper, this newspaper, shouldn't the Washington Post, shouldn't the LA Times and the San Francisco Chronicle and the Chicago Tribune, shouldn't the USA Today, shouldn't they at least try to understand what it is about Trump's policies that might attract and appeal to working class voters who don't have a high school degree, who are the ones who support Trump? I mean, it's very clear. The demographics are clear. If you don't have a college degree, rather, you're much more likely to support Trump. Shouldn't they try to examine whether the parties in power were dismissive of, gave the cold shoulder to, pursued policies that harmed working class people? But that's not even on their radar screen, Arlen.
Well, yeah, but I think, again, like I said before, I think you're talking about policy. I think the popularity of Trump doesn't have that much to do with policy. I think it has more to do with style over substance. And, he's just, come across so strong and so powerful.
But Arlen, let's assume that's all true. Okay, let's assume it's all true, that it's not policy that has driven Trump's voters to Trump. Shouldn't the New York Times, shouldn't these other newspapers at least examine whether the policies of the candidates that they do support, of the parties that they do support, have harmed working class voters? Shouldn't they question whether their attitudes, their cultural superiority complex turns people off? I've never seen one article about that.
Yeah, no, I don't dispute what you're saying. I think they should make a better effort to do that. But, that's not the New York Times. They're not, they're pretty...
Well, what newspaper is it? What newspaper is it that does that?
Well, there's all kinds of, right-wing newspapers and websites and, the Wall Street Journal, all the Fox News publications. I mean, there's plenty out there that give, that.
I don't think the Wall Street Journal gives a lot of service to working people. I don't think it spends a lot of time talking about how free trade, 35 years of free trade, has decimated the heartland. Now, I might be wrong about that, but I don't think they do that.
Well, Republicans and right wingers aren't really big on working people when you come right
Well,
down.
and neither are Democrats, Arlen.
Well,
That's the problem. Working people have no allies, no friends. They're on their own.
Well, I think the Democrats are a little bit better than that. I think, Joe Biden did go on the picket line with the auto workers, and he's, doing some things that'll help unions. And
He stopped the rail strike. He said no rail strike.
Yeah, and
he
also
didn't champion card check when he had an opportunity to do that.
Well,
They're a little bit less bad. But again, these are half measures at a time when people are increasingly desperate.
Of course, I want more to be done too. But he did mention, it's crazy that we have a minimum wage of $7, national minimum wage of $7.25. And, that has to change. And he made some more of those points that, are helpful to, I think, working people that are going to be tough for the Republicans to, come aboard for. So,
All right, Arlen, great to have you on. Any final words before we call it a Monday? And I guess I'll have you back next Monday. You're like my last refuge, Arlen. I fear I have alienated so many people. My pro-Palestinian stance, my harsh criticism of the Democrats, my willingness to see good in Republican voters. None of that goes over well with my crew, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, if you were thinking more like me, maybe, your numbers would go up, but
well, I'd be a thought leader if I'd be a thought leader.
But, right now, I think it's interesting that, Trump is now putting his relatives and his friends on the, Republican National Committee, and totally has taken over that party. And it's, it's not a party anymore. It's a cult. And I think that, the Democrats, have to come across as a more reasonable party, and they obviously are. So, we'll see what happens. And by the way, one other thing, you played some of that Saturday Night Live opening, and I think it's the funniest part was seeing their imitation of the Katie Britt, giving her speech. I think that was horrendous. She's getting nailed by everybody for that horrible speech that she gave. Did you see it?
No, I didn't. I'm frankly not even sure who Katie Britt is. I've heard the name a lot. Who is Katie Britt? She's not in Congress, is she?
She's the senator from Alabama, and she's considered maybe a possible vice presidential candidate for Trump, but not anymore. She did a horrible job.
She's a U.S. senator from Alabama. Wow. So she was the one who beat the Democrat, right? There was a Democrat down there. Yeah. Remember, he beat the judge, the pedophile judge.
Yeah. But yeah, well, I don't know that much about her, but I do know she's young and attractive and all that. But, she really messed up.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't play it. I'll look for that. Maybe we can talk about it even next week. It probably won't have gone completely stale, but if it has, I'll try to, I'll look into it anyway. And thanks for bringing that up, Arlen. No, I'm not familiar with her. So yeah, there's all these massive holes in my knowledge, which I appreciate your filling, at least with regard to Senator Britt, whose name completely escaped me. All right, Arlen, I'd heard the name, but I really didn't know who she was. So I shouldn't say I never heard the name. I'd heard it. I just wasn't clear who she was. So I appreciate that.
Well, I think you should also pay attention to what she told a story about that she had talked to a woman who told about all these horrible sex crimes that were done to her. And she kind of implied that Biden was responsible and had something to do with it. But in fact, it was something that happened like over 20 years ago. Biden was nowhere near it. And, she basically lied about, a story that she made up that was just plain wrong.
Well, I'm not surprised. Again, that's what politicians tend to do, is lie and make things up. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, I wish we had a better system, but we don't. Before we go, I was thinking of something. I think you'll agree with this, Arlen. What will help Biden, I keep seeing these teasers and headlines. At some point, it looks like Taylor Swift will endorse Biden if she hasn't already. I'm sure that will help him.
I don't think she will. I think she's smarter than that. She's got basically the whole country behind her, and it would be kind of stupid for her to alienate a good part of the country. But I think she is promoting voting, and I think that's helpful, and it will help the Democrats if more people come out to vote. So
I'm not going to push it. If you think she won't do it, maybe she won't. I thought she would, but maybe not.
I'd be surprised, but it is possible. But I'd be surprised.
All right, Arlen, you have a great afternoon. It was really always fun talking to you. I learned a lot. I appreciate your time. It's great that you come on. And I'll be back tomorrow, Tuesday, with Halitics. Please remember, click subscribe. I'm going to mute Arlen, so if he starts moving his lips, you will not hear him speak.